Hey guys, tonight we're building sanctuaries from splinters and moon dust. Imagine your fingertips brushing blueprints that glow like ghost skin under a single candle. The scent of pine resin clings to your shirt, part workshop, part incense. Temperatures set to 68 degrees here in my studio. Perfect for whispering oak secrets without throat scratch. Your pencil skitters across parchment, each archway and buttress born from graphite prayers. Moonlight slices through the workshop window, sharpening chisels into silver bones on the wall. A spider descends onto your drafting table, 8 legs trembling like misplaced cathedral rafters. You blow gently, sending it spiraling into shadows. Fun fact, medieval builders called blueprints devil's contracts. They'd hide 3 deliberate flaws to avoid divine wrath. Bet your IKEA manuals never demanded that kind of drama. Speaking of, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment where you're watching from and the local time. Phoenix at 11 p.m., Tokyo at breakfast. We've got night owls and early larks here, all welcome. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. The candle flame wavers as you lean closer. Your compass nib bites paper, drawing circles within circles. 13-year-old oak beams wait in the corner, still whispering forest dreams. You rub sawdust between thumb and forefinger, golden grit that smells like forgotten Sundays. Here's a weird one. Builders once mixed fermented tree sap with owl blood for weatherproofing. Sticky. Absolutely. Ethical. Let's not ask. Your own jar of pine tar glistens in the dark, mercifully foul-free. The pencil snaps. You grab another from the clay pot your daughter molded, slightly lopsided, always reliable. Wind sneaks through the crack under the door, making blueprints shiver. Your stomach growls. Should eaten more than that honeycake at dusk. Historians still argue whether medieval compasses aligned with true north or the nearest tavern. You adjust your own trembling tool, aiming for something between geometry and grace. The North Star blinks through warped glass, bending celestial certainty into a drunken squiggle. Midnight oil smokes in its lamp, thick perfume of commitment and bad decisions. Your pinky smudges an inked spire, blurting stone into cloud, mishap or miracle. The chapel in your mind shrugs. Floorboards creak like old joints as you shift weight. Mouse scratches punctuate the silence, tiny claws writing alternate blueprints in the walls. You tap 3 times on wood. They tap back, not neighbors, not yet. The candle drowns in wax, wick hissing its last breath. Dawn's first blue bleeds through the window. Tools gleam fresh sharpened, though your hands never moved. You touch the T-square, warm as living flesh. Outside, blackbirds test the still dark air with questioning chirps. Your pencil drops. The blueprint lies complete, a fragile spiderweb of intentions. Somewhere beneath the parchment, hidden by careful shadows, 3 deliberate flaws pulse like a heartbeat, just in case. Granite rumbles into the yard. At dawn, each cartwheel squeal, carving troughs in the mud. You run fingertips across a quarried block, frost still clinging to its mottled face like veils. Medieval builders favored local stone, saves coin and blisters. But nobody warned you how it breathes. The first slab sucks warmth from your palms, a greedy guest demanding breakfast. Workmen's hands swarm the load, calluses catching on iron crowbars. One man hums a shanty about lighthouse keepers' wives. Another spits seasoned tobacco where the altar's foot will stand. Historians still argue whether olden masons added rosemary to mortar for sturdiness, or just to mask cemetery rot. You catch a red-bearded carrier pocketing a fist-sized stone. He winks. For luck, he drawls, though his sleeve glints with 3 stolen chisels. The crew hoists a pillar, gristle, and groans harmonizing. Your blueprint shivers in the wind, suddenly flimsy against these primal bones. By noon, the stack of granite grows too fast. Mist retreats as sunlight bears the stone's true colors, gray as storm-soaked doves. 15 blocks bear strange marks, circles with slashed centers. Experts think they're medieval quarry tags, but you sketch them anyway, just in case. A bowlegged mason shows you his trowel, handle carved with a squinting goat. Old trick, he rasps. Goat's gaze wards off shoddy joints. You don't mention the tremor in his tool arm. Some rituals need their secrets. At rest breaks, men chip off crystal veins, quartz glittering like trapped starlight. They trade chunks for apple slices, a silent market of sweat and sweetness. You learn granite dust makes bread gritty, but also keeps weevils off floorboards. One laborer mumbles through a mouthful, tastes like God's own gravel. Dusk comes early, sky bruising behind half-stacked walls. You find a crude carving where the pulpit will rise, a stick figure bishop mid-sneeze. The red-bearded thief's laugh echoes from the tavern road. You let the joke stand, wood can't mock, but stone remembers. Moonlight returns, softening edges again. The chapel's skeleton hums with tomorrow's weight and the ache of your untrained hands. Your shovel bites frozen soil, steel ringing like a muted bell. Neighbors gather with offerings clutched in mittens, dried sage, tarnished pennies. A chicken's wishbone polished smooth. Medieval foundations often hid ghost gifts, though Mrs. Tully swears her rosemary sprigs will outlast the mortar. Diggers strip off layers like pages, clay, roots, a rusted horseshoe pointing east. That's St. Eligius's lost nail, crows a gap-toothed laborer, ignoring the fresh hoofprint nearby. Your blisters burst in rhythm, each jab rewarding you with soil black as monks' robes. They debate where to plant the cornerstones. Old Gregor demands true north. How else will Gabriel hear the sermons? His rival spits. Angles won't save your crooked carpentry. You compromise by aligning stones with the butcher's chimney smoke, practical divinity. Children drop acorns into the trenches. For the trees that'll eat your church someday. Giggles, a freckled vandal. Their mothers press copper coins into your palm, warm from apron pockets. Historians still argue whether these buried tokens were bribes for saints, or just our ancestors' version of good luck spam. Nightfall unveils the foundation's true shape, a crooked starfish missing 2 arms. You crouch to adjust a wayward stone and strike something glassy. An intact gin bottle winks up, 1934 vintage. The foreman hoots, proof the last crew had better sense. Frost creeps in filling trenches with brittle lace. You tuck a tin locket into the deepest pit, your sister's infant curl coiled inside. The earth accepts it without comment, a mother swallowing medicine. Moonlight etches the site's blueprints across the snow, temporary, fragile, already sweating at the edges. Neighbors retreat, pockets lighter, boots caked in tomorrow's sacred dirt. You press an ear to the ground, hearing nothing, hearing everything. The frozen soil clings to your boots like a grumpy apprentice, reluctant, resentful, finally yielding. Dawn paints the lumberyard in weak tea light, timber stacks huddling like drowsy sentries. Your axe stroke bites into the first pine, splinters arcing like startled fireflies. Medieval carpenters worshipped heartwood, those tight, resin-soaked rings, laughing at rot and worm. Your blade finds a trunk's sweet spot, wood fibers parting with a sigh older than feudalism. Sap wells up, golden tears glittering with trapped sunlight. Local legends claim these droplets foretold, whether clear amber for sunny days, milky swirls signaling storms. Yours look suspiciously like cheap bourbon, though the cloudless sky suggests those old woodsmen might have sampled their barometers. Logs split with satisfying cracks, each rupture echoing through the valley. You hum a work song, realizing halfway through it's the Dies Irae chant from Sister Margarita's funeral. Awkward. The pile grows, fresh planks breathing out centuries of forest memories. One slab sports grain patterns like a hymn's musical notation, complete with what might be a treble clef. Historians still argue whether medieval builders exploited such quirks for chapel acoustics, or just needed better eyewear. A woodpecker rat-a-tats disapprovingly from a surviving birch. Critique the joints after they're carved. You snap, tossing a pinecone that misses by 3 pious yards. Splinters nest in your palms, tiny stigmata sands the sainthood. Lunch tastes of resin and rye bread, sawdust garnish enhancing the let's call it rustic flavor. The foreman arrives squinting at your stack. Seasoning wood's not a race, he grunts, though his eyebrows hint at approval. He thumps a plank, the ring resonates like a bass bell. This'll outlast your grandchildren's grandchildren, assuming they're not idiots. High praise. Twilight brings a strange reward. Sanding reveals a knot shaped like Jerusalem, or possibly a duck. You chip around it, preserving the holy waterfowl for future debate. Blisters bloom. Sweat soaks your collar. Blunted chisels pile up like exhausted soldiers. Across the field, lanterns flicker in the foundation trenches, ghost lights keeping your arches company. You pocket a curl of wood shaving, fragile as a saint's fingernail. The night shift belongs to owls and delusions, their hoots blending with your raspy sanding strokes. By moonset, your hands have memorized every groove, every whorl, every secret the trees swallowed before axes were invented. The timber sings now, its voice pitched between wind and memory. And for once, you stop carving just to listen. Morning smears the sky like a lazy watercolor, all peach streaks and indecisive gray. The timber's midnight song still hums in your knuckles as you stumble toward the glass house, its brick belly already belching smoke. Coal heat slaps your face, welcome, after 3 hours of chiseling ice from the water troughs. Medieval stained glass relied on Persian cobalt for that divine blue, traded ounce for ounce with silver. You watch the master glassblower dip her pipe into molten crystal, cheeks ballooning as she breathes life into shapeless fire. Her furnace gulps sand and ash, births glowing orbs that wilt like angry grapes. A 12th century guild scroll claimed arsenic whitened glass, but the greenish tinge to her teeth suggests some recipes stay best forgotten. Saint Margaret or Saint Barbara, she rasps, spinning a blob into a martyr silhouette. The blob coughs, bubbles forming where the eyes should weep. You choose silence, better to let artists and volcanoes speak unedited. She scowls, dunks the failure back into flames. A tiny horse emerges instead, perfect for some unrequested apocalyptic writer. Historians still argue whether wonky cathedral glass represented spiritual humility or just drunken apprentices. You sweep ash while she curses in Latin, a skill learned from defrocked monks, no doubt. Molten saints drip onto the furnace floor, frozen screams in ruby and gold. She salvages one, a twisted seraphim, and presses it into your palm. For luck or repentance, it burns exactly like divinity should. Her teenage assistant arrives wheeling a barrel of urine. Turns out medieval glassmakers used it to stabilize colors. The sharp ammonia tang mingles with wood smoke, creating a cologne you'd call peasants regret. The boy winks. 5 more flagons, and we'll get purple. You decline, suddenly appreciating your sawdust diet. By noon, the annealing oven exhales rainbow breaths, cooling panes singing like overworked choirs. Light pierces a green fragment, painting your boots in emerald puddles. The glassblower nods at your wonder. Sun's a show-off, but we let it slide. She points to a warped pane of Virgin Mary, whose face melted into something suspiciously resembling a winking pirate. That's going above the confessional keeps priests honest. Your pocket saint still glows its heat, now a patient simmer. Outside, the chapel's skeleton wears frost like lace gloves, all ribs and no skin. You press the glass against a beam, watching dawn ignite its veins. For a heartbeat, the timber's song returns, harmonizing with crackling embers. The glassblower kicks ash from her boots, a philosopher dismissing metaphysics. Burn enough sand, you'll see God in the cracks. Twilight finds you counting pains, half saints, half happy accidents. Night shift crickets chirp the first vespers as you leave your shadow stretched long and fractured through cobalt glass. Somewhere behind you, a furnace door slams, the sound of creation, continuing without an audience. The forge bellows wheeze like asthmatic dragons, your breath visible in the pre-dawn murk. You're not a smith, just the fool who gets to pump the bellows, while old Tom hurls curses at glowing iron bars. Each hammer strike flings orange sparks, fireflies born from sheer annoyance. 3 nails already cool in the quenching bucket, twisted little things resembling arthritic fingers. Tom spits on an ingot. Roman blacksmiths used goat blood for tempering, makes the metal sing sweeter. You make a mental note, never drink from Tom's flask. Your arms burn, yet there's rhythm here. The bellows creak matches your pulse, a primal metronome. Charlemagne once paid a village's taxes in nails, easier to count than coins. Tom's hammer dances, flattening red-hot metal into sharpened devotion. A 4th nail emerges, this one straight enough to please even a Cistercian abbot. Found one in me, dis roof beam, Tom mutters, flipping the rod, nigh on 300 years old, still bit into oak like it owed money. Historians still argue whether church nails contained melted down pagan amulets, though the blister on your thumb feels suspiciously cursed. You pause to pry a splinter from your palm. Medieval peasants hid bent nails under doorsteps to deter witches. A practice Tom mocks by nailing a horseshoe upside down over the forge. Let's see them hex this. He grins, teeth gleaming in furnace light. Noon sun reveals your hall, 47 nails arranged like a rusted porcupine. You count twice. Tom swipes 5 for quality checks. Each flawed reject gets tossed into a clay pot, their clatter echoing through the empty chapel frame. 17th century French carpenters believed spilled nails could birth demons, which explains your sudden urge to sweep. The last ingot glows white-hot. Tom hums a drinking song as he works, hammer transforming violence into utility. This nail stretches longer than the rest, destined to pin the ridge beam. When struck, it rings middle C, confirmed by the tone-deaf altar, boy hiding in the rafters. Dusk brings pilgrims bearing offerings, a farmer's rusted plowshare, a widow's hairpin, a child's broken spoon. Tom melts them down without comment. The forge becomes an alchemist, transmuting grief into 10-penny spikes. You pocket a nail, warmed by the day's labor, its head stamped with Tom's crooked T somewhere north of here. Viking ship timbers still cling to their iron teeth. Your creation will outlive you a century from now, pinning some future monk's splintered prayer bench. The bellows sigh their final breath. Tom hands you a nail recently pulled from his own boot. For luck, he growls, already trudging toward the tavern. You press it against the chapel's cornerstone, feeling the ghost of every strike, every oath, every blister that built a kingdom. Candlelight reveals your shadow, a hunched giant hammering air. Around your feet, iron seedlings wait to take root in wood. Tomorrow's carpenters will curse their bent backs, sing hymns, never knowing which nail holds their roof or their history. The archway mocks you, its curve now a sagging frown. One keystone shifted during the night, whispering secrets to gravity. You touch the crack cold as a bishop's handshake. Medieval masons mixed mortar with ox blood for strength, though yours smells suspiciously like Tom's cheap ale. Rain patters through the gap, each drop etching a darker stain on fresh limestone. You chip away rubble with trembling hands. Venetian bridge builders deliberately inserted a single flawed brick, believing perfection invited divine wrath. Your mistake feels less holy, more like a kick from a mule. Mortar oozes between stones like wet ash. 14th century Paris banned nighttime construction. Noise disturbed scholars at the Sorbonne. You break the rule, working by lantern light. The trowel slips, embedding a snail shell into the joint. Historians still argue whether Norman buttresses were inspired by whale ribs. But your wonky arch now sports a fossilized garden. Dawn reveals a bulge in the wall, a stone pregnancy threatening to burst. You press an ear against it, hearing nothing but your own pulse. An old stonemason's trick: bury a live falcon in the foundation to ensure straight walls. You settle for spitting 3 times into the mortar, a poor man's blessing. Children gather, throwing pebbles at the defect. One ricochets into your broth, adding unintended crunch. Knock it down. Laughs a girl with braids like frayed rope. You let her place the next stone. A tiny plaque, hidden inside, bears her thumbprint. Future archaeologists will puzzle over this, assuming it's a peasant's curse. The village priest arrives, sniffing heresy in the crooked line. Chartres Cathedral leans 16 inches westward. You mutter, patching another gap. He leaves muttering about humble hearts and plumb lines. Your reply stays lodged in your throat, something about architects and egos mating with compasses. 3 days pass, the arch still drunk. You dismantle it stone by stone, fingernails packed with gritty regret. Roman concrete recipes called for volcanic ash shipped from Pompeii. You've got river sand and desperation. Each block gets a new number, chalk digits glowing in moonlight. Midnight brings a stranger in mud-caked boots. They correct your faulty template without a word, carving adjustments with a moonlit chisel. When you blink, only a warm tool handle remains. 17 years later, you'll spot the same figure repairing Notre Dame's spire and say nothing. Rebuilt, the arch stands half a finger's width shorter. You smear mortar over the joint, hiding a rusted nail from Tom's forge inside. Someone hammers a donkey shoe above the keystone, its hollow clang echoing through the nave. You sleep against the cured masonry, cheek pressed to cold stone. the wall exhales latent heat, dreaming in geologic time. In your pocket, the snail shell fragment hums, a miniature hymn no thicker than a scar. Rain hammers the naked rafters, their pine bones groaning like an untuned harp. Thunderhead clouds mimic your thatching plans. If chaos were a blueprint, you juggle rye bundles, Saxon roofs, used straw layered with horsehair for insulation. Though your pile reeks of wet dog and old barns, a gust plucks your last ladder rung, sending it clattering into the font's dry basin. Sanctified tripping hazard, you mutter, fishing it out with a pewter flask. 14th century London band thatch roofs after the Great Fire. But your village obeys older rules. The flask's mead leaves a sticky resolve on your tongue. Wind weaves through gaps, playing the rafters like a pan flute. You lash crossbeams with willow switches, recalling Venetian builders who soaked ropes in wine for elasticity. Your knots drink rainwater instead, swelling into drunken grins. Historians still argue whether Norman roof pitches matched prayer angles, but tonight's storm measures slope with floodwater. Thatch slaps your face, a scratchy sermon. You weave reeds tight as scripture, hiding a child's outgrown shoe in the layers. Superstition claims footwear wards off lightning, though you'd trade it for a proper lightning rod. 3 hens roost in your half-finished eaves, their droppings cementing feathers to wet straw. Dawn leaks through gaps, painting tiger stripes on the dirt floor. You chip ice from the pulpit ledge, the cold clinging like a choir boy's ghost. Medieval masons secretly carved caricatures of bishops in hidden roof spaces. Your rebellions, a horsehair beard woven into the thatch. The widow Brigham brings a rooster for consecration. You nail its coop to the north wall, hoping crow song masks creaking beams. Rainwater channels through hollowed logs, pooling where the altar will stand. Someone's tossed copper pennies into the puddles, green faces of drowned kings smiling up. Your hammer strikes a hidden nail, sparks kissing thatch. Panic douses the moment until laughter bubbles up. Prague's 1360 cathedral fire started this way. Yet here you stand, arsonist and architect, in one singed apron. A charred reed becomes your quill sketching revised plans in the mud. Neighbors arrive with leaky buckets, their hands blistering as they pass sloshing chaos. You direct the deluge, barking orders like a rain-soaked admiral. Someone's toddler floats a walnut boat in the font, its tiny sail a stolen communion wafer. You let it ride. Nightfall finds you hip-deep in runoff, fishing for tools. The drowned rooster glares from its perch, feathers plastered into a martyr's cloak. You pluck a sodden psalm book from the flood, its pages blooming into Rorschach angels. Your boots suck at the mud with each step, a quagmire's Eucharist. Starlight exposes the roof's crooked silhouette, a skyline of broken teeth. You swallow doubts with a hunk of salt pork. Tomorrow brings more reeds, and the village drunks promise to teach them rafters Latin. As you drift off, rainwater drums a lullaby on the pulpit's bare spine. A drip lands on your forehead, cold as a priest's forgotten vow. You catch it in your palm, this minuscule baptism. Outside, the storm whispers secrets to the newly thatched eaves. Sleep comes, a waterlogged mercy. The mold cracks open, brass exhales its first breath as a monstrous bowl. Village boys crowd the steaming curve, tossing pebbles that plink like coins in a leper's cup. Their giggles echo up the bell's throat, a sound it can't answer. You wipe soot from the inscription, Sanctus Ignes, though the foundry's cat keeps pissing on the holy letters. Twilight turns the cooling metal blue, same shade as Viking arm rings looted from Sutton Hoo. Medieval bishops swore church bells scared off thunderstorms. Judging by today's cloudless sky, yours works better than incense. A girl chucks a hazelnut. It bounces thrice inside the void. It's hungry, she declares. You don't argue. Night watchmen arrive with a stolen clapper, prized from a monastery ruin upstream. Its iron tongue fits your bell's groove, yet slips loose with every test. Turns out 8th century Czech monks weighted clappers with lead pellets for deeper tones. Yours just coughs like a sick badger. Dew collects in the bell's belly, a liquid mirror for stars. You lean over the rim, your reflection stretches into a church spire. 14th century London fined bell ringers for disrupting royal sleep. But here, silence is the true crime. The watchmen bet dried venison on whether crows will nest inside by dawn. Frost etches cracks in your clay mold, ruined beyond reuse. You smash it with a sledgehammer, revealing a lump of fused pilgrim badges. Someone's scent, Christopher metal, winks up, melted in the pour. Bellmakers once blended silver coins into bronze for a purer ring. Though experts found it just made thieves lick the sides. Dawn reveals the clappers gone missing, replaced by a rusty scythe blade. It clangs like war when tested. Village elders nod approval, their teeth rattling with each strike. Historians still argue whether invading armies removed bell tongues to muffle alarms, or just hated pretty sounds. You find the original clapper buried in the privy, wrapped in a Latin primer. Boys confess under interrogation, though their punishment involves scrubbing the bell's innards with lye. Their shouts bounce off bronze. First echoes your hollow, giant ever sings. The blacksmith brings a lead ingot stolen from cathedral repairs. For balance, he insists, hammering it into the clapper's core. Winchester's bells reportedly swung so hard in 1382, they cracked their own tower, a story you choose not to share. Testing resumes at midnight. Strikes reverberate through your shoe soles. A fox joins the chorus, howling at each metallic groan. The widow Brigham complains it's summoning her dead husband's ghost, though she stays to watch until the stars fade. When the deacon arrives to bless the bell, he trips over its rope. Holy water splashes the rim, same stuff once used to baptize Parisian bells in 1201. You half expect the metal to cry Amen It just drips, sanctified rust trailing down the inscription. Children return at dawn, thumbs stained with stolen mulberries. They press handprints onto the bronze, leaving sticky smears that buzz with flies. You don't scrub them off. Beeswax candles gutter in the bell's shadow, their smoke drawing lazy halos in the still air. By noon, the clapper's gone again, along with the scythe blade and 3 carrot tops. You spot fresh scratches inside the bell, tiny fingernail glyphs, spelling some child name now lost to patina. A single hazelnut rests where the clapper hung, tribute or taunt. You can't decide. Clouds gather as you forge a new tongue, this time with a chain. Let thieves try stealing Zeus's own jewelry. Raindrops sizzle on the anvil. Each hiss a preview of coming thunder. The bell sways in its temporary frame, a toothless mouth yawning at the storm. You pocket the hazelnut, just in case. The hazelnut weighs heavy in your pocket as you kneel, blunt, chisel kissing limestone. Farmer Hobbs watches from the cider stump, his dead wife's name already etched in your thumbnail. Charcoal grit cakes your palms. Each swipe leaves smudged half letters on the cornerstone. You carve Thomas, mason extra deep. Let the rain remember who built this hunger. A boy drags his sleeve across the stone, erasing a week's work with one snotty flourish. His mother slaps his ear. The sound echoes off the bell tower's ribs. Saint Nicasius got his head chopped mid-prayer, you mutter. Lucky kid. She doesn't laugh. Medieval masons often slipped parchment names into cornerstone gaps, though you prefer immortality via chisel. Local lore claims ash from funeral pyres mixed into mortar binds spirits to buildings. You sprinkle soot from last winter's hearth, watching it settle into Mary Brigham. Babe unnamed, the widow herself, arrives at dusk, fingering the grooves like braille. Should have added my first husband, she jokes. Thunder agrees, a low chuckle from horizon bones. Scholars still debate whether cornerstone carvings were records or attempts to cheat death itself. Your knife slips, gashing the R in riverfoot. Blood beads merge with charcoal, creating a rusty ink even time might pause to read. Someone left a dried mulberry on your tools, stolen back from the bell's sticky patina. You press it into a crevice, nature's own sealant. 10th century Byzantines used honey and crushed pearls for mortar glamour. Your version involves spit and desperation. Nightfall brings the deacon. His censer circles the stone like a hound sniffing heresy. Unsanctified marks, he tuts. You point to his own ink-stained fingers from Sunday's bulletins. He retreats, trailing smoke that clings to the names like gossamer shrouds. By midnight, your palms stain the limestone gray, grave rubbings in reverse. A hedgehog noses through offerings left at the base, a button, a milk tooth, 2 hazelnuts now split and weeping. You add them to your pocket collection. Saints crave weird relics too. Dawn reveals a new name scratched beneath the others, J. Smith, thief of clappers. The letters shimmer with bell metal dust. You let it stay, judgment isn't in the mortar's job description. Rain comes at last, washing the stone clean, except where tears pooled in deepest cuts. Charcoal blooms rise darker where water fails, funeral roses in eternal bud. Wind gnaws the chapel's spine, timbers shriek like gutted violins. You grip a wobbling post as roof thatch takes flight, 100-winged prayers escaping skyward. 14th century carpenters reused nails religiously, each iron spike worth half a day's wages. Your fingers grope through mud, counting survivors. 14 straight, 16 bent, 3 mangled beyond recognition. Not terrible for a divine tantrum. Lightning forks the bell tower's silhouette, an arborist's diagram of damnation. The deacon's censer lies impaled on a birch branch, still oozing bitter myrrh. You pocket it, heretic confetti. Splintered planks stab upward, a forest of guilty fingers pointing anywhere but heaven. Scholars still argue whether medieval collapses stemmed from poor math or God's grudge against right angles. Rain slices sideways, needling your collar with monastic precision. Thatch scraps cling to your boots, soggy insulation for blisters baptized in splinters. You spot the widow's name still etched in limestone, charcoal trenches defying the deluge. Mary Brigham outlasts you too. You tell the storm. Thunder growls, a lazy comeback. Dawn leaks through battered clouds, revealing the bell buried nose-deep like a drunkard's hat. Its silent mouth overflows with acorns, squirrels preparing for the apocalypse. You pry up a floorboard, snapping like wishbones. It's riddled with beetle trails, spelling memento mori. Kids would charge 5 francs for spookier Ouija boards. Your knuckles brush something cold in the muck, Father Alban's stolen communion cup. The storm even loots the looters. Wiping mud reveals dents from a long-gone fistfight, sacramental anger made artifact. Legends claim tempests carried souls of unbaptized builders, eternally auditing shoddy joints. You pat the cup, not my doctrine. By noon, the sun bakes debris into a carpenter's cemetery. You stack salvaged beams into a cairn, each layer echoing sledgehammers that shaped them. Blisters burst, staining wood with coppery devotion. 2 boys drag a warped pew from the river, its legs sprouting mossy beards. You trade them a pocket hazelnut for labor. Sweat makes lousy currency. The bell's clapper surfaces downstream, wrapped in waterweed like a drowned saint's relic. Its chain left a rust tattoo on a boulder, accidental stigmata. You heft the icy metal tongue of a mute giant. Medieval miners allegedly sang to iron veins to tame their temper. Your hum fractures against the clapper's dents, off-key and unconvincing. Nightfall finds you roasting stolen altar candles over a nail fire. Flame shadows dance on the standing wall, last witness to your hubris. Someone nailed a horseshoe above the ruin, rust blooming where luck should be. You flick a hazelnut at it. The plink echoes into owl territory. Moonlight stitches the chaos with silver thread. Your ledger lies splayed in the mud, rain-swollen pages fluttering like suffocating doves. Squinting reveals half-legible tallies: 37 planks, 89 nails, one chapel-shaped regret. Historians never mention this part, the scorekeeping after divine demolition. Frog's song rises from the font's crater. You drop the clapper into murky water, a baptism without witnesses. Ripples distort your reflection into something resembling patience. Tomorrow's problems swim just beneath the surface, hungry and many-mouthed. You lace bloody fingers behind your head, counting constellations through the missing roof. Cassiopeia winks through shattered rafters, queen of the cosmic rubble. Moonlight still pools in the font's hollow when you smell it, burnt sugar and sap. 3 warped planks lean against the rubble pile, applewood ghosts from a storm-toppled orchard. Their bark wears old fire scars, zigzagging up the grain like divine graffiti. 16th century altars favored fruitwood, symbolizing Eden's uneaten bounty. You brush sawdust from a knot shaped like Judas's jowl. Promising, the first plank splits clean under your adze, spilling century-old pollen that glows faintly green. Sneezing summons Mrs. Hewitt's specter from Chapter 9. She materializes just long enough to tut at your measles. Ghosts hate unfinished projects more than they hate living. Splinters embed themselves in your palms, stigmata with OSHA violations. By dawn, the altar bones come together, cross-braced with rusted coffin nails. Each tap echoes off standing walls, a Morse code confession. Blossom scars pock the surface, petal-shaped voids where sacramental wine might pool. Historians still argue whether imperfect altars were holy humility or lazy joinery. You chisel a crook into the southeast leg, better catch wayward prayers. Noon brings a villager dragging a cider press, thought you'd need ballast against damnation. His daughter pockets your last hazelnut, price of doing business. The press squeals under applewood's weight, crushing out resin that smells like forgotten Lenten promises. You catch yourself humming that off-key mining hymn, irons still not impressed. Twilight reveals the problem, one leg's 2 fingers shorter. Medieval remedy involved lead shims blessed by mute priests. You use a psalm book instead, James 3. 5 makes decent leveling material, lightning forks above the crooked steeple, nature's nod to adaptive engineering. Some say God only strikes what he envies. Nightfall drapes the nave in moth-eaten shadows. You rub linseed oil into the wood knotholes, glistening like hungry pupils. 13-year-olds invented the bleeding altar myth back in your hometown, said crimson sap flowed during heresy. These wounds just seep politics and residual sap. The first raindrop hits the altar center, a perfect bullseye. You watch water trace the grain, mapping routes for future communions. Tomorrow brings the bishop's inspection and his legendary side-eye for rustic craftsmanship. Your chisel etches a cricket into the underside tiny blasphemy only termites will witness. Frog's song rises as YOU Chinese letter, the new altar already warping in the damp. It'll sag, it'll crack, it'll outlast every straight-edged thing in this valley. Somewhere, a squirrel buries an acorn in the bell's shadow. Time folds its hands. Candle smoke curls upward, your fourth failed attempt at tracing St. Lucia's eyes. The flame gutters, casting apostle-shaped shadows that merge with your own. 14th century, masons supposedly mixed lampblack with egg yolk to sketch fresco guides. Your version just reeks of poor life choices. A draft carries the scent of yesterday's rain from the font, holy water, and splintered promises. You lean into a chisel strike. The sandstone retaliates by chipping St. Paul's nose. Medieval altars often hid carved toads beneath moldings, symbols of temptation conquered. Yours gets a woodlouse mid-scurry. God loves the industrious. A cobweb clings to your sleeve, dragging its architect into theological debates about living lint. 3 candles die as you carve, their wax pooling into miniature Galilee seas. Someone's left a chamois cloth too near the brazier. Now it's jerky. Shadows deepen where the transept meets the nave, an ink blot test for the devout. Historians still argue whether Gothic builders engineered these ambiguities or just ran out of torches. Your thumbnail finds a fissure in the wall, perfect for wedging that lopsided cherub. The 1327 Psalter of Metz mentions masons sealing dried crickets in mortar for luck. You settle for a hazelnut shell. Let future restorations wonder. Moonlight bleaches the rude screen, turning your mallet into a bone-white wand. A bat detaches from the rafters, its shadow leaping across your St. George. Now the dragon has wings. 13 parishioners swore they saw Satan's face in Wakefield Cathedral's grain patterns in 1612. You're pretty sure that's just oak's dark sense of humor. The last chisel stroke echoes, a sound like a lost coin hitting marble. You step back, realizing you've accidentally sculpted the bishop's double chin onto St. Matthew. Candle wax crawls down the candlestick, molten timekeeping. Tradition says unfinished carvings ward off demons. You've invented sainthood's first rough draft. Dawn leaks through arrow slits, exposing your shadow apostles arm in arm with the real ones. A spider claims the vacated bat roost, spinning silk sacraments. You leave the mallet atop the scaffold. Let the next pilgrim argue with the stone. Wind riffles through your charcoal sketches, scattering disciples across the floor. Somewhere in France, a nearly identical nave ceiling took 3 generations to complete. Yours will settle for speaking in half-formed silhouettes and a woodlouse congregation. Your knuckles brush against newly stretched linen. The looms warp, threads hum like chapel gutters after rain. 16th century Flemish weavers hid tiny self-portraits in tapestries. Borders yours gets a coffee stain shaped like Denmark. The shuttle clicks through your fingers, each pass weaving martyr's blood red into Magdalene's sepia hair. Silk apostles stretch taller, with every throw their faces smudging where the dye vat bubbled too hot. Medieval inventory lists mention tapestries repaired with squirrel fur during wool shortages. You're using moth-eaten choir robes, their hymn numbers still stamped on the collars. A thread snake nests in the yarn basket, coiling around your thimble like a tiny papal ring. Sunlight slants through the scriptorium window. Your tapestry Judas glows, alarmingly pink. Historians still argue whether the Winchester fragments, frayed edges, signaled a weaver's crisis of faith, or just hungry mice. You spit on a knot to tighten it, saliva being the medieval solution to most textile problems. 3 colors dominate the cartoon sketch: ochre for devotion, woad for sacrifice, and mud brown for administrative errors. The bishops requested 28 saints. You've hidden his nephew's face in a decorative fleur-de-lis. Someone's left an apple core in the woad dye pot. Now, the Holy Spirit resembles a fermented Granny Smith. Needles whisper through wool, reconstructing Gabriel's missing wing from a nun's unraveled scapular. Your assistant swears the dye vat's steam smells like burnt incense. Your blaming Tuesday's failed attempt at beeswax candles. The 1391 inventory of St. Denis records a tapestry woven with silver-gilt thread that tarnished mid-Lent, divine judgment on vanity or poor metallurgy. Midnight finds you rethreading the loom with hair-thin silk, fingers mapping blisters into calluses. A spider lowers itself onto the half-woven Lazarus, turning resurrection into an 8-legged puppet show. You've embroidered 7 barley grains into the hem, a nod to Exodus hidden beneath the weaver's mark. Dawn unveils your progress, stitched hands reaching across the fabric like blind men tracing scripture. The central panel gapes where Judas should be, his absence more eloquent than any betrayal. Rumors say Burgundian weavers slept beneath their looms to absorb divine visions. You're absorbing splinters, and the nagging sense that Mary's eyes don't quite match. A moth escapes from the wool basket, its wings leaving spectral powder on the descent from the cross. You tally threads remaining, enough crimson for 7 martyrdoms, or 1 really persuasive sunset. The Liber de Coloribus Illuminatorum recommends crushed lapis for heavenly blues. Your version uses laundry bluing and crossed fingers. When the noon bell rings, you realize you've woven the same row 14 times. Time to quit or declare it, a deliberate nod to Christ's stations. The loom's rhythmic clatter follows you into the courtyard, a mechanical rosary counting stitches instead of sins. Moonlight turns the baptismal font into a frozen geode, its marble veins spiderwebbed with ice. Your breath crystallizes halfway to the stone 97 tiny drops, suspended like abandoned Hail Marys. 17th century French churches stored holy water in lead-lined boxes during winter, though none mentioned the peculiar blue tint it left on infants' brows. A splinter of ice breaks off beneath your thumbnail, shaped uncannily like the bishop's missing signet ring. You chip away at the frost with a trowel meant for mortar, the scraping echoing through empty arches. Rural parishes once believed ice patterns predicted harvests. Angel feathers meant wheat blight. But you've got what looks like a frozen sneeze. The iron ladle screams against the basin, a sound straight from Dante's dishware nightmares. 3 attempts to pry up the ice sheet, each met with cracks radiating sharper than heresy accusations. Historians still argue whether English fonts stayed empty in winter to prevent magic workers from stealing holy water, or just because everyone hated numb fingers. Frostbite nips at your earlobes, nature's reminder that martyrdom didn't include long underwear. You rub tallow on the font's rim, an old stable hand's trick against sticking metal. The December cold snap has turned your carpentry apron stiff as a bishop's mitre, every creak accusing you of slow progress. Dawn unveils your progress, a crescent of bare stone where ice reluctantly retreated. Medieval artisans mixed wine into mortar for winter work. Your flask of cheap claret serves dual purposes. Ice water soaks through your boots, the original baptism happening toe first. A sunbeam hits the font's remaining ice, revealing air bubbles frozen mid-escape. They form a lopsided cross, or maybe a fish skeleton. You debate chiseling it into something symbolic until the village butcher wanders in and asks why you're staring at ice cubes like they're the shroud of Turin. Noon brings a conspiracy of crows leaving beak prints in the snow outside, avian graffiti critiquing your masonry. Your fingers trace the basin's curves, smooth as a communion wafer, until you hit frost-heaved chips. 14th century liturgy required fonts be height of a kneeling man. Yours would suit a particularly devout badger. The ice returns by vespers, thin translucent sheets like layered phyllo dough. You catch yourself whispering to the growing crystals, half expletive, half charm. Records from Norway mention priests blessing font ice directly, declaring it Christ's winter mantle. Your version keeps cracking when the altar boy sneezes. Snowdrifts muffle the world beyond the chapel door, leaving only the ice's sub-zero creaks. You press a warm palm against the font, watching temporary meltwater carve paths through ancient stone pores. Honeycomb weathering, the same process that shaped the cave monasteries of Cappadocia, now etching micro-cathedrals beneath your hand. Moonrise finds you grinding salt with a mortar and pestle, your version of storming hell's gates. Granules hiss against the ice, a sound like parchment burning. Tomorrow, the first baptismal water since autumn, or a very expensive ice sculpture. The salt stains the marble pink where it touches iron deposits, a accidental stigmata for your thrice cursed font. Wind whistles through a chink in the north wall, playing the chapel like a frozen flute. You wedge a scrap of woolen hose into the gap, muffling the noise to a tolerable wheeze. 3 generations back, some ancestor probably skipped a stone in the mortar mix. Now You're their architectural sin-eater. Midnight oil lamps paint your shadow across the font, a distorted giant looming over its icy charge. One final scrape reveals the maker's mark, your own initials hidden beneath centuries of lime scale. The ice cracks open with a sound like a breaking wafer, holy water pooling at last in its stony palm. Morning light splinters through warped planks, your chisel wobbling along a sagging roof beam. Blisters burst like overripe grapes with each strike. The timber, stubborn as a mule raised on Pythagoras. Secret guild codes from medieval Germany required compass marks on load-bearing joints. Yours look like chicken scratches after 3 ales. A shadow cools your neck. You spin to find a man squinting at your crooked dovetails. His leather apron hangs heavier than yours, stained with pigment swirling like stolen sunsets. No hello, just a calloused thumb tracing your botched mortise. He smells of cedar shavings and something metallic, like a sword wrapped in parchment. The stranger's tools emerge, a smoothing plane with mother-of-pearl inlay, a compass sharper than a cardinal's tongue. Historians still debate whether Renaissance guilds poisoned rivals linseed oil. But this guy's vial smells suspiciously of bitter almonds. He realigns your mallet, mid-swing his grip, correcting your angle. The next blow lands clean, wood yielding like dough under a baker's fist. Sunlight shifts. You're too busy marveling at his tenon joints, friction tight, without a drop of glue. 13th century carpenters used bee spit as adhesive during droughts. His method needs only precision. Your pencil trembles marking the next cut. His hand steadies yours. The line snaps straight, a geometry even Euclid would have toasted with sacramental wine. He carves cherubs into corbels between your panting breaths, wings feathering from knots in the oak. Each gouge follows the wood's secret roadmap, avoiding stress points that splinter by epiphany. A 1596 Venetian text describes masters whispering to timber. You catch him murmuring what sounds like plain chant to a beam. Soup bells clang in the village. He vanishes like sawdust in a gust. Left behind a flawless arched brace, and your lunch gone stone cold. The joint fits so snug, you swear the wood fused at the cellular level. Guest workers in Chartres Cathedral supposedly left healing herbs in wall cavities. You find rosemary sprigs tucked beneath the new brace. Dusk reveals his corrections, angles sharper than a heretic's wit, curves flowing like Gregorian chant. Your original design lies mutilated in the shavings pile, humbled but improved. His chisel marks bloom like metal flowers. Each strikes echo still ringing in the rafters. You search for footprints, only stone dust leading to the tool pile. His compass rests atop your mallet, needle pointing northeast. Some claim master builders aligned churches using lodestones. This one aims toward the fading North Star. Nightfall brings phantom hammer taps, or maybe just the chapel settling into its new bones. The stew in your bowl grows colder still, a small price for perfect geometry kissed into being. By prime tomorrow, no trace remains, but the ghosts of better lines haunting your workbench. Moonlight bleeds through unfinished rafters, your fatigue pooling in the sawdust like spoiled milk. A nibbling sound pricks the silence, too crisp for termites. You climb splintered steps to the choir loft, lantern raised like a reluctant exorcist. 12 tiny shadows freeze mid-manuscript. Mouse paws dance across your psalm sketches, leaving trails that could be musical notation or just oat crumbs. Medieval scribes set oyster shell traps for such vandals. Your pencil-smudged parchment now hosts a rodent symphony. One thief sits upright, whiskers powdered with your charcoal. Its squeaks form a perfect minor, though that might be the sleep deprivation talking. You scatter bread crusts from dinner, a piece offering that doubles as bait. Historians still argue whether monkish mice nibbled doctrinal errors into illuminated manuscripts. But these look suspiciously literate. They drag crumbs into the organ's pipe cavity, stockpiling grace notes for winter. A pup tries hauling your quill, comically dwarfed by the feather. Dawn approaches, their squeaks harmonize with distant roosters. You sketch tiny paw prints between staves, fossilizing this nocturne in the margins. The Liber Pontificalis claims a papal mouse once chewed through a heretic subpoena. Your visitors prefer Gouda over theology. Silence falls with the last crumb. Below, your untouched mattress yawns like a judgmental tomb. Sleep steals you mid-snort, the mice now conducting an aria in your left ear. Your forehead sticks to the workbench, sweat-glued oak grain imprinting cheek script no one can read. Fever twists the lantern's halo into a migraine crown, each heartbeat pulsing behind your eyes like a blacksmith's mallet. Axe wounds on your palms burn brighter now, red crescents humming with every chisel strike. Hazel tea cools beside sawdust piles, a peasant fever remedy your great aunt swore by. You sip once, the bitterness puckers your teeth into wrinkled leather. Historians note Tudor carpenters drank ale instead, barley masking willow bark's tang, a stiff trade brain fog for pain relief. The rafters ripple like heated glass. Your drafting charcoal snaps, black powder scattering across half-drawn columns. Clever, really, how your shaky lines now mirror earthquake-resistant joints used in Japanese pagodas. Not that anyone will notice, assuming you live to finish. You stumble toward the font basin, sloshing yesterday's rainwater over cracked lips. Your reflection wavers, a half-drowned ancestor scowling through the ripples. 17th century guild records mention masters working through plagues. Their apprentices smuggling pine resin poultices into workshop coffins. Romantic, until you're the one sweating through linen. A cough rips up your ribs, a wet, splintered sound. The promised cross for the altar tilts in your vision, 3 nails blurring into 9. Your grip tightens, fingers memorizing the grain's tidal patterns. Medieval woodworkers believed oak absorbed a craftsman's vigor, left thumbprints in the joins as fever amulets. Nightfall brings phantom drafts, your tools clattering without touch. You carve by muscle memory, crossbeams becoming a geometry of slurred prayers. The Stavelot Bible allegedly cured a monk's ague, words absorbed through parchment pores. Your chisel etches desperate notches, holy hashtags for divine algorithms. Dawn licks the east window, your shadow puppet bent against the wall. Someone left elderflower syrup and a wool cloak at the door, no footprints in the dew. Historians still argue whether guilds enforced sick days, but the chapel's spine grows straighter each hour. A final cough rattles the rafters, sputum flecking the pews like misguided incense. You collapse into shavings, fingertips raw from cruciform signatures. The mice return nibbling your bootlace as your shivers sink with their chewing tempo. Sleep comes as a cracked bell's echo, tolling the shape of tomorrow's unfinished edge. Vines slither across your half-built walls, leafy graffiti claiming divine right. You blink at their audacity, nature's congregation, assembling without sermons or collection plates. 17th century groundskeepers used billhooks to fight such green invaders, curved blades singing through kudzu choirs. Your pruning shears feel comically small, like attacking a bear with a butter knife. Morning dew glues tendrils to limestone, each ivy handprint shimmering with smug persistence. You spot heart-shaped leaves among the chaos, woodbine, they call it. Medieval peasants believed its sap cured lovesickness, though swallowing vine slime sounds like its own punishment. A thorn snags your sleeve, hungry green fingers demanding tithes of blood. The south wall's oak crucifix disappears beneath emerald veils. You hesitate, torn between preservation and surrender. Scholars still debate if Chartres cathedrals, stone grapes, honor Christ, or hidden Dionysian rites. Your shears hover. Does pruning count as heresy if the vines bloom faster than your prayers? Children's laughter floats from the meadow. They've woven daisy chains into the scaffolding. You salvage a wilted crown from the mud, its petals translucent as stained glass rejects. Someone tied red yarn around a sapling, crude protection against spiteful dryads. Historians found similar charms in Viking longhouses, thread-crossed branches guarding against maple tree ghosts. Rainwater pools in the font again, now hosting a frog choir rehearsing ribbit psalms. You lean closer, your fever-flushed face rippling beside amphibian sopranos. Tudor gardeners imported toads for pest control, their warty choristers paid in beetles and neglect. This one eyeballs you, judging your half-finished arches with golden-lidded scorn. At sunset, you find wild roses scaling the bell tower, their thorny ladders too pretty to destroy. Wasps zip between buds, fuzzy architects drafting hexagonal condos. You recall Byzantine monks training bees to pollinate monastery gardens, winged sextons ringing floral bells. The hive hums louder, a vibrating threat when your shears stray too near. Moonlight transforms ivy into mercury rivers, liquid silver swallowing your chisel marks. Your shadow joins the foliage, limbs stretching into gnarled arabesques. Renaissance herbalists swore moonlight boosted pruning vigor, harvesting Judas tree bark at full glow. You snip a defiant shoot. Sap bleeds white under the star's night, weeping for days lost chlorophyll. By dawn, your hands smell of crushed mint and rebellion. The vines retreat temporarily, leaving chlorophyll tattoos on limestone. You pocket a spiraled tendril, future kindling, or reluctant muse. Tomorrow's growth already stirs in the soil, a green tsunami biding its time. The chapel walls breathe deeper now, stone lungs expanding under endless spring. Warm rain transforms the river into a churning beast, its frothy tongue licking your half-built steps. You wade in to save floating tools, only to freeze. A swollen shape bobs against the scaffolding, waterlogged wool clinging to limbs like decomposing bark. Historians note medieval law required burying drowned strangers within 3 days, lest their phantoms sink future ships. Your fingers brush salt-crusted fabric, the stench of brine and something older. The river coughs up its prize at your feet. A Bible bulges from the corpse's grip, pages fused by algae into a leathern tumor. You peel it open, silverfish dart between psalms, tiny heretics gnawing at Solomon's verses. Tutors sewed pilgrim coins into hems for safe passage. This one's pockets hold only pebbles and a fishhook. Rigor mortis sculpts the hands into clawed supplication, broken nails caked with silt. You imagine them gripping a ship's rail, storm waves chanting their own liturgy. The debate still rages. Did pilgrims deliberately sail dangerous routes to mimic Christ's Galilee trials? This face offers no answers, eaten by currents into a blur of beard and barnacles. Children find you kneeling in the reeds, their daisy chains wilt as they gawk. Anglerfish. One squeals before mothers drag them away, crossing themselves. You note the pilgrim's waterlogged boots, iron nails hammered through soles. 17th century cobblers swore this prevented sailors from slipping into Davy Jones' grip, though it made swimming impossible. You dig where the baptismal font will stand, shovel cracking through shale like sacramental wafers. Village elders mutter about curses, but the 1432 Council of Florence declared drowned unknowns deserve consecrated ground. Rot seeps into the soil as you lower the body earth, accepting its first communicant. Nightfall brings screams from the river. You rush out, expecting ghosts, but find fishermen hauling a rotted longboat. Its prow sports a carved saint, eyeless and grinning. Someone splashes holy water at the Hull Orthodox sailors' once painted eyes on ships, so saints could steer them. This one's sockets gape empty, blind wood grinning at the stars. Back in your tent, the dead pilgrim's Bible cracks open, a pressed marsh flower staining Jeremiah's Lamentations. Had some sweetheart slipped it between pages? Or did the river plant its own elegy? You place it beneath a floorboard, future font directly overhead. Let filtered sunlight bless those waterlogged words when infants scream through christenings. Dawn reveals a carved fishhook by your tools, left by who? The pilgrim's rusted relic, or payment from whatever dragged him under. You kneel to inspect it. Your shadow merges with the grave's outline. Two shapes bowing together, builder and drowned disciple, united in the chapel's wet, waiting bones. Storm lanterns sway like drunken fireflies. Their light licks the chapel's underbelly. You press a palm to the northeast beam. Wood pulp clings damp to your skin, wrong. Historians know medieval builders soaked linen in oxhide glue for emergency repairs. You've got frayed hemp bandages and a prayer. Thunder applauds your hubris. Mold blooms between joists, black petals fanning across timber. You peel back rot with your knife. The blade carves soft valleys. Chapel's got a cavity. You mutter dentist to holy architecture. A 1638 Florentine text suggests using stale bread as temporary filler. Too bad you ate the last crust at supper. Lightning forks through the rafters. The world whites out. Your shadow burns onto the wall, a charcoal saint mid-flinch. When vision returns, glowing embers dot the beam. Not fire, foxfire fungus clinging to decay. Some claim this fairy light guides lost craftsmen. Currently, it's just spotlighting your shoddy joinery. You wrap the beam in linen strips, swathing it like a mummified limb. The bandages sag under glue, translucent skin over necrotic bone. Historians still argue whether lightning strikes on churches were considered divine censure or architectural critique. Another flash, your makeshift splint glows electric. Rain bleeds through the roof, syrupy drops flecked with ash. The beam groans, a bass note rattling your molars. You remember the drowned pilgrim's Bible, water warping good wood. Maybe why low branches would have been wiser, those bend without breaking. Too late. 3 lanterns flicker out, their wicks drowning in wax. A sound like cracking knuckles, the ceiling dips. You dive sideways, ancient reflexes from dodging falling masonry. The beam holds linen bandages, weeping glue tears. Outside, lightning tattoos the forest, 1,000 silver birches bowing in unison. Nature's congregation shows up uninvited, as usual. You press an ear to the floor. Termites, floodwater, then a wet crunch. The sourdough starter jar in your satchel has exploded. Yeasty sludge oozes over tools. Holy paste. You snort, wiping gloop into the beam's crevices. Let future scholars puzzle over this ritual offering. Dawn arrives gray and contrite. The splinted beam droops, but holds. You scratch a Star of David into the glue countercharm against your shoddy craftsmanship. Across the clearing, finches bathe in a puddle, flipping water over their wings like tiny priests sprinkling blessings. The storm's wrath settles into dew, each droplet cradling a fractured sky. The iron hinges arrive at dusk, still reeking of forge smoke. Their maker stands in the downpour, a silhouette warped by rain. You recognize those scorched hands, charred palms clutching his offering. He places the metal on your workbench, 3 sets of hinges, shaped like clasping fingers. Each joint bends with eerie fluidity, knuckles hinged at the phalanges. Bog iron was Europe's hidden treasure, harvested from marshes where blood-red water betrayed its presence. These hinges smell of peat and saltpeter. You run a thumb over the metal, cold despite their journey. Forgiveness rusts slower than steel. The smith rasps. His left sleeve hangs empty, burned to nothingness last Michaelmas Eve. Historians still argue whether Celtic metalworkers forged hand-shaped hinges to honor Lug's craftsmanship or scare off Viking raiders. You're just glad they pivot silently until wind slices through the chapel. The iron fingers start clapping slow, mocking applause. Meant to do that, the smith mutters, already retreating into the woods. Dawn finds you drilling holes through wrought iron wrists. The bell tower's doorframe splinters under your auger, pine, protesting the intrusion. 19th century penitents often kissed threshold hinges to absorb a builder's virtue. You settle for not cursing when metal sears your palm. Rain soaks the leather strap, securing your ladder. You brace the first hinge against rotting wood. Its cold fingers grip the frame. Legend claims blacksmiths' souls get trapped in poorly hung doors, though no one explains how to check. The screwdriver slips, gashing your thumb. Blood pearls mix with oxidized metal, a tarnished sacrament. By noon, all 3 hinges cling to the doorframe, joints stiff as a bishop's collar. You test the door. Iron knuckles screech against pintles. Some medieval churches used whale oil for squeaky hinges. You've got duck fat from last week's supper. It'll have to do. The smith watches from the tree line, his face, a canvas of scars and remorse. When you turn to call him closer, he's gone. Only hoofprints remain, filled with rainwater gleaming like molten tin. 17 nails lie where he stood, bent into tiny begging hands. You hammer them into the door's base, a chorus of metallic pleas underfoot. Wind surges through the open doorway. It hums through hinge fingers like panpipe music. A 1475 Florentine ledger lists squeaking door repairs as a tax-deductible charity. Your auditor probably wouldn't agree. Dusk amplifies every creak. The hinges groan in triplicate, deep, humanoid moans. You wedge a stone beneath the door to mute them. It works until moonlight hits the iron. The metal fingers twitch, casting elongated shadows that clutch at your ankles. You step back, they still. Fears a poor sexton, you tell the empty chapel, but light extra candles anyway. Historians know Gothic architects hid saints, thumbprints in decorative ironwork, divine QA stamps. These hinges bear no holy marks, just pockmarks from the smith's trembling hammer. Sleep comes fitfully. The hinge's wail harmonizes with a distant owl. You dream of iron filings burrowing into skin, forging new joints. Dawn reveals frostbite patterns on the door, ice feathered across pleating metal hands. The smith returns at first thaw, left arm still missing, eyes bloodied from sleeplessness. He touches the frost-etched hinges, traces a blistered finger along their screams. When he leaves, a lark's feather rests in the door's palm, white flag of surrender. You oil the hinges again, this time with linseed and beeswax. Their song softens to a penitent whisper. The door swings freely now, though sometimes at night you swear it reaches for the latch. The village quiet breaks with giggles. A gap-toothed shadow dances at your workshed door. Tea-colored braids peek around the doorjamb, then a rusted hammerhead. "'Ta says these need fixin'," pipes the voice attached to it. 7 bent nails tumble onto your sawhorse, rusty commas pleading for straightening. Medieval apprentices started as young as 6, their tiny hands perfect for carving delicate moldings. You're pretty sure this one's here for the jam tarts in your apron. The hammer's handle drags on the ground as they approach, a comically oversized saber. "Ever heard of elf nails?" you ask, turning a crooked spike in the sunlight. Their eyes widen. Local legend claims fairies bend nails to mark hidden gold veins. Truth was guilds often sabotaged rivals' supplies during cathedral builds, but whose spoiling magic, their first strike glances off the anvil, sparking a metallic yelp. The nail cartwheels into sawdust. Historians still argue whether the child labor in illuminated manuscripts depicts real apprentices or just cherubs someone doodled. You bite back a laugh as they chase the runaway nail, boots crunching oak chips like autumn leaves. Third swings the charm. A deafening ping echoes through the chapel shell. The straightened nail glows like a knight's blade, if the knight used a rockweed-stitched mallet. By noon, their hammer arm droops, but 12 salvaged spikes stand soldier straight in a block of pine. 2-finger tightness, you murmur, guiding their grip. They smell of sheep's wool and burnt honey, probably raided a baker's window again. Byzantine child workers earned sweets as wages. This negotiator's rates are 3 tarts per hour. Raspberry seeds glitter in the hammer's grain. A bent nail becomes a ring twisted around their grubby finger. For when you marry a chimney sweep, you joke, they blow sawdust off their masterpiece, a surprisingly decent nailhead rose. When the chapel's built, you'll tack it behind the pulpit, a saint's forgotten corsage. Dusk paints the sky mulberry as they depart, hammer dragging twin furrows through mud. Their pocket jingles with payment. One final tart smuggled in waxed parchment. You press a finger to the anvil, still warm from their off-key strikes. Nightfall brings a new choir. Wind plays the nail rose like a reed flute. Sleep claims you to the tinny lullaby of repaired iron and the lingering sweetness of stolen jam. Pumpkin guts cling to your boots, slick seeds squelching like a swamp of orange brains. You carve hollow faces where pews will stand, curve-bladed knife scraping through thick rinds. Candle stubs wink inside their toothy grins, liquid gold pooling on packed earth. Harvest moons once told medieval peasants when to reap, but this one's purely for stealing lamplight. A dozen gourds leer silently, flickering sentries guarding your unroofed nave. Your chisel hums counterpoint to cricket wings, nature's pocket watch ticking toward frost. One lantern sags, juice dripping down its cheek like amber tears. You prop it up with salvaged nails. Saint Pumpkin needs no crucifix. Historians still argue whether autumn bonfires were holy purifications, or our ancestors just liking big fires. A rat noses through seeds drying on your sawhorse, its tail writing cursive in pumpkin slime. You flick wood chips at its rump. Medieval pest control meets modern improv. They used to carve turnips into spirit lanterns. Pumpkins became popular when someone decided hollowing a vegetable shouldn't require a battle axe. Midnight gnaws your fingertips numb. You press palms against a gourd's warm belly, last summer's sunlight trapped in its flesh. The blade slips, slicing a crooked smile wide enough to make saints blush. 3 farmers arrive at dawn, wheelbarrows piled with corn husks and gossip. They arrange pumpkins like rough-hewn pews, kernels crackling under their boots. Heard the miller's daughter married a tanner. One mutters, stuffing straw into a listing jack-o'-lantern. Your mallet pounds a rhythm, shaped percussion beneath their murmured scandals. The sound startles crows from the bell tower skeleton, feathered black notes scattering across pewter skies. A child's muddy hand darts into your tool belt, emerging with a fistful of pumpkin seeds. You pretend not to notice. Let them plant next year's lantern crop between floorboard cracks. Moonrise stains the chapel walls copper. Rotting pumpkin flesh perfumes the air, sweet decay and burnt cinnamon. Somewhere in the woods, a fox yips at your candlelit saints, a feral hymn for the unroofed choir. Your last chisel strike echoes through the gourd-stuffed hall, cricket song answering from the shadows. The elder's shadow stretches across your crooked walls, knotted cane tapping each listing stone. Heard the Gloucester bell tower. They croak, a voice like parchment dragged over gravel. Pride cracks faster than mortar. Their finger draws a trembling line where wall meets shuddering wall. You shrug, smear fresh mortar over gaps. Lime and sand hiss beneath your trowel. The same mix that built castles surviving 800 winters. Hardens stronger with age, a truth every mason whispers between prayers. The elder spits into your mixing bucket, a frothy splash rippling the gray paste. Was that a commentary or a contribution? You ask, wiping flecks off your apron. They snort, pointing to a sagging arch. Midland's masons swore oaths backward. Weak I make, God mend. Kept 'em humble. A cold wind snakes through your half-built vaults, stirring sawdust into phantom spires. 3 farmers haul in oak beams, sweat gleaming like gilt. You wave them off, wood creaking as they retreat. The elder watches with milk-blue eyes. Double arches saved Amiens Cathedral, You mutter, chisel biting deep into flawed stone. Amiens had bishops. They snap. You've got pumpkin pulp, sacred bones. A flaking hand shoves aged leather into yours. A mason's square, blackened by centuries of grips. Test every joint, unless you want a leaning chapel of Pisa situation. Historians still argue whether England's great collapses came from shoddy craft or lords rushing feast day dedications. Your knuckles whiten around the relic, its right angles sharper than any truth. Twilight paints the walls in feverish orange. You swing your crowbar, prying loose stones with a wet crunch. The elder nods, gloating over each dismantled block. Rotting pumpkin lanterns watch from corners, sagging martyrs to your hubris. One farmer lingers, tongue poking through gaps in his teeth. Reckon saints prefer straight walls or quick ones. He plucks a nail from your rubble pile, flips it like a coin. Half donkey'll swear your first arch looked fine. Your laugh tastes like sawdust and crow. Half donkey's the fool who sold me warped timber. Crickets inherit the night shift, their song stitching through dismantled dreams. Dawn finds you releveling foundations, plumb line trembling like a divining rod. The elder's cane rests against a salvaged stone, its handle shaped like a sleeping falcon. You press palms to earth, cool and unforgiving. Some claim medieval builders buried quicklime under church floors to warn of shifting ground through heat. Your fingertips feel only worms and stubborn clay. A child's whisper floats from the elder's vacant cloak, left draped over your sawhorse. Grandsire says you'll lay stone better than turnips this time. You tuck a peppermint into the ragged fabric payment for lessons in collapse. Moonlight bleaches your rebuilt arch. The mason's square glows in its shadow, accusing every millimeter. 3 days' labor sits piled like broken teeth, tomorrow's mortar already crusting in the bucket. Snow eats your chapel whole, a white monster with breath of knifed wind. Frost stitches your eyelashes shut. Each step sinks hip deep, the crunch of 1,000 glass teeth. Some claim medieval masons stored mortar sand in sheep gut bladders during winter, kept it dry for spring. Your burlap sacks freeze solid, useless as a woolly mammoth at harvest. A shovel scrapes stone beneath the drifts, metal scream echoing across buried dreams. The elder's falcon-topped cane pokes through snow like a periscope. You yank it free, finding their gnawed peppermint wrapped in last month's psalm. Hoarder, you mutter, pocketing the sweet. Sheep huddle where your altar should stand, their steaming dung melting perfect circles in the frost. One stares, black eyes judging your snow-caked mittens. Might built your pen first if I'd known, you lie. Woolly snorts missed your knees. Nightfall brings dreams of termites, not wood-chewing fiends, but crystalline bugs carving glacial ice. They etch psalms into bergs, verses melting into August rivers. Historians still argue whether York Minster's architects used ice blocks as temporary supports. You wake clutching frozen bedrolls, half expecting frostbite hymns on your palms. Dawn reveals 6 frozen eggs balanced on your sawhorse, magpie gifts, or some quirky Ice Age offering. You tap one, it rings like cathedral glass. Lovely, you tell the watching trees. Now bring sackcloth insulation. Half donkey appears at noon, face wrapped in soot-stained scarves. Heard blizzards kill pride faster than elders. His laugh dies mid-chortle. You lob an ice egg at his head. It shatters, glittering shards spelling amen in the slush. Digging resumes. Each shovelful of snow weighs more than yesterday's regrets. You uncover your cornerstone, its hidden names wearing frost like baptismal gowns. The Emmeline carved there might be a stillborn babe from parish records, or just a mason's sweetheart lost to time. At twilight, you light a fire in the snow hollow where the font will go. Flames lick old oak scraps, the scent of Advent services, and last, summer's bonfires. Some say Viking builders soaked timber in urine to prevent freezing cracks. Your cedar spits a protest, probably rejecting modern bladders. Sleep comes harder tonight. The termites return, this time nibbling your fingernails into ice harps. They play greensleeves off-key. You wake to 4 magpies on your frost-stiff cloak, a parliament of thieves debating stolen nails. Day 3 unearths the worst, meltwater seeping into your foundation trench. It mirrors the sky, showing inverted spires mocking your progress. You break the ice with a rusted hammer, a sound like God cracking walnuts. Half donkey's wife arrives with a cauldron of mutton stew, charity or curiosity. You don't ask. She eyes your snow-sunken walls. Gran claimed ice preserves holiness, like a cellar keeps apples. You sip broth, avoiding her gaze. Your Gran ever build a chapel? Just 11 bairns, she shrugs. Same principal structure and stubbornness. By week's end, the site's a quilt of mud and shattered ice. Your plumb line dangles over slush, a steel pendulum too numb to lie. The elder's square still judges from its perch edges, frosted like a Methuselah beard. Final dream, termites lead a monastery tour through your ribs, selling tickets for the architect's crumbling heart. Their ice picks chip at your sternum, carving a rose window only blizzards will see. Morning light exposes wolf prints circling the stacked timber. A lone paw rests on your blueprint's dark mud, smudging the word sanctuary. You add an extra nail to the doorframe, just in case holy hunger comes hunting. Snow resumes at noon, silent and smug. You occupy the last dry patch, whittling a cedar shingle into something resembling a saint, or possibly a disgruntled sheep. The termite hymns linger faint and frozen as winter locks its jaws around your throat. The midnight cold gnaws deeper, tonight teeth sinking past marrow into memories. Your forge lies silent until ashes stir without wind. A shape darker than charred timber glides between tools, robes swallowing moonlight. Monks once mixed ash with holy water to bless bridges, though experts debate if it strengthened mortar or just scared trolls. Frozen cobwebs shiver as the visitor's sleeve grazes your anvil. Their thumbprint smudges soot across your hammer's handle, a coal-black crescent. You pretend sleep, breathing, syncopated to snore rhythms heard in Canterbury pilgrim logs. Gloved hands lift your rusty trowel paws, set it due north. 3 oak splinters fall from nowhere, forming a tilted cross. Your nostrils itch from the scent burnt rosemary and forgotten attics. Did Burgundy nuns really bury their first bells to confuse demons? The question freezes midair. Dawn leaks through frost-caked hides, stretched over window gaps. You find your tools warm, strange in this jellied dawn. Each metal surface wears ash constellations. Orion's belt draped over chisels. The visitor's footprints circle the bell mound each, step a melted hexagon in the snow. Next to your mallet rests a walnut-sized lump resin soaked in hearth ash. Scholars swoon over such builder's charms found at Cluny Abbey, though most agree it's just medieval duct tape. You pocket it, a peasant's tax of trust. Half-donkey arrives bearing icicle daggers as gifts. Herd wolves held a Gregorian chant last night. His grin falters at your ash-streaked apron. Or, did you finally anger the bishop? Just a friendly ghost, you say, knocking ice from the bell's rim. The clang coats the forest in silver tinnitus. By noon, the ash has seeped into tool handles, gray veins marbling the wood. Your saw bites cleaner now, as if the teeth learned new psalms. The elder's thrice-cursed plumb line swings true for once, a miracle or hidden magnets. Work halts when you spot the symbol charcoal and spit on the east wall. A spiral pierced by 3 nails, or maybe a cinnamon roll attacked by a drunk carpenter. Historians still argue whether Malta's stone temples used similar marks as blueprints, or just bored artisan graffiti. Twilight brings uneasy dreams, monks arguing over your cedar shingles. Too knotty for a sacristy, but termites hate the resin. You wake clutching the resin lump, now imprinted with your palm's lifeline. Morning frost outlines where the visitor stood, boot soles melted into the dirt forever. You sprinkle shavings over the marks. Let winter claim what it loves best. The bell remains mute, but its iron feels warmer than yesterday's feeble sun. Your last nail of the day bends, a drunkard's elbow in miniature. The ash-coated hammer straightens it in one strike, leaving a sooty fingerprint on the beam. Show off, you mutter, but light a rushlight in thanks. Spring thaw arrives as a wet thief, stealing frost glue from the chapel's joints. Cellar beams groan, then surrender. Meltwater gushes through floor cracks, half-drowned pitch barrels bobbing like drunk seals. You wade in hip-deep, the cold bites old quarry injuries. Medieval builders slathered pine sap between stones, though experts think it was mostly for keeping rats out. Half-donkey's mule peers through the doorway, ears swiveling at each slosh. Got a new pond, you shout, skimming algae off the surface. The floating pitch smells like April's angry cousin, a mix of turpentine and regret. Your bucket hits something rubbery, a split eel skin balloon. Did Cistercian monks really inflate those to test sewer drains? The thought drifts away with a bubble swarm. Bailing becomes a soggy hymn. Scoop and heave, scoop and heave. Every fifth toss soaks the mule. It brays something ungodly, probably Old Testament curses. By midday, your hands prune into riverbed topography. The arcs finally beach themselves, pitch oozing like molasses from a wounded giant. A barrel stave bears carvings, seven-eyed fish, encircling what might be a turnip. Historians still argue whether Norman masons hid body jokes in sacred structures. But this fish turnip isn't helping. You chip tar from your boot treads, each glob destined to haunt future archaeologists. The mule sneezes, a wet catastrophe. Your ladder floats past, crowned by a struggling spider fleet. At least termites drown easy. You mutter, recalling last winter's frozen hymn nightmares. But the cellar's silt holds worse, rusted hinges. A child's leather shoe, something that might have been a bone rosary. Dusk brings reinforcements, 3 farmers' daughters hauling reed baskets. They work in silent sync, braiding rushes into drainage ropes. One hums a tune from the drowned Pilgrim's Bible, or maybe a tavern song with the dirty verses removed. Their mother arrives with a clay jug, hot elderberry wine sharpened with vinegar for the waiting sickness, she says, though her wink suggests stronger remedies. Nightfall finds you alone again, tar fingerprints glowing under a waxy moon. The last barrel's bung hole coughs up a sodden sheepskin. Unrolled, it shows fever dream sketches, a chapel roof eaten by giant moths. Workers building a stone hive, a blacksmith forging keys to fit clouds. You toss it back, let the water have its riddles. Sleep comes in short bursts, punctuated by the suck-end gurgle of retreating floodwater. Dawn reveals a miracle. Your tool shack leans, but stands its walls smeared with algae frescoes. The bell's clapper sways without wind, a dull clunk, like a turtle knocking on heaven's door. Half-donkey returns at noon, kicking a bloated loot case filled with drowned bees. Hired a singer, he announces, gesturing to a shivering youth clutching rusted rakes. Their first duet, the soggy schlup-schlup of your boots fleeing the scene. The cross arrives strapped to half-donkey's mule, its iron spikes snagging on twilight. Wind plucks harp strings through the holes in your tunic, or maybe that's your ribs shivering. Medieval steeples rarely topped 200 feet. Yet this rusted giant could scare the stars. Steals the show, half-donkey grunts, adjusting the pulley ropes. His breath reeks of last week's elderberry wine, now a vinegar ghost haunting his teeth. The mule flicks its tail, swatting gnats, and existential dread in equal measure. You grease the winch with lard stolen from the weaver's loft. It squeals like a stepped-on piglet. The cross sways, etching dark squiggles in the sky. Benjamin Franklin won't patent lightning rods for another 5 centuries. But your hands already know the weight of grounding holy sparks. Rising iron drags the village's gaze upward, a dozen necks cracking in unison. Someone's grandmother spits 3 times, an old trick to keep witches from hitching rides on sacred metal. Half-donkey loops a horseshoe around the crossbar, its rust bleeding onto his calluses. For luck, he lies, pocketing the 7 bent nails that fell out. Dust devils whirl through the scaffolding, stealing your hammer mid-swing. The mule brays as the tool clatters into the nettle patch. You glare, spotting a kidskin glove fused to the handle by last summer's heat. Historians still argue whether steeples marked God's presence or just gave lost travelers something tall to pee behind. Your shadow stretches across the grass, a black smear smaller than the cross's nail holes. Lightning rods might have saved 1,000 Saxon churches, but molten glass saints still dribbled down their walls come storm season. The winch chain snaps on the 9th heave, a metallic death rattle. The cross tilts, its shadow becoming a sundial that only reads doom. Half-donkey lunges, ropes burning through his palms like salvation's last cigarette. The village drunk chooses this moment to sing Greensleeves off-key. Or maybe that's the wind in the bell tower's throat. 7 villagers materialize, hands gripping hemp like they're pulling heaven itself to earth. Sweat glues your shirt to fresh splinters, a fashionable look for cathedral accidents. Someone's toddler offers a daisy chain, its petals wilting under the cross's shadow. Iron kisses the steeple's apex with a groan that vibrates your molars. The horseshoe slips, plunging toward the flower beds. Half-donkey's curses fertilize the rhubarb. You tighten the final bolt, sealing the cross's fate with a zigzag scar from last month's lightning strike. Silence falls, the kind that lives between prayer and panic. A single drop of your blood darkens the grass, joining centuries of builders' offerings. Night creeps in, turning the cross into a jagged rip in the sky's fabric. Some say steeples pierce hell's ceiling tonight. You'd swear the stars are bleeding rust. Your shadow bows low, pressing its forehead to scorched earth. The mule sneezes, an unholy sound. Tomorrow brings consecration. But tonight, you nap beneath iron teeth, dreaming of Franklin's ghost stealing your good lard. Dawn licks the chapel's eastern face, your rose window still crusted with last night's dew. Sunbeams punch through cobalt glass, painting Lazarus's tomb with a blue frank never bottled. Medieval glaziers used egg whites to set pigments, an omelet of devotion cooked into every pane. A mote of gold leaf spirals down, your last speck of Byzantine tesserae escaping the scene. Costs more than your granny's teeth. Half-donkey had grumbled when you traded his mule for it. The 12 apostles ripple across fresh plaster, their sandaled feet floating on a sea of lead came. Voices murmur beyond the oak doors, a rumble of boots shifting on gravel. Straw bits cling to Peter's stone beard. Your broom gave up at 3 a.m. Historians still argue whether rose windows proclaimed divine order or just showed off how much townsfolk paid their glazier. You squint at the Viridian Madonna. Her once green robe, now chartreuse, where sunlight hits pigeon droppings. 13th century crafters swore blue glass required crushed sapphires, turns out cobalt oxide, and lies work fine. A child's nose smudges the Judas pane, their breath fogging the betrayer's silver coins. Something cracks above, a hairline fracture sneaking across Thomas's doubting fingertip. You pocket the chip. A future diggers will call it a holy relic. Dawn crawls lower, gilding dust motes into fake incense. Your knees pop like Elijah's chariot wheels, hitting heaven's potholes. The iron cross dribbles rust onto fresh whitewash, hell's eyeliner smudging the walls. Outside, a widow hums Veni Creator Spiritus through her missing teeth. A hymn turned whistle. You recall Franklin's advice about guests and fish stinking after 3 days. Better open the doors. Hinges scream like martyrs' cats. Faces tilt upward, a quilt of awe and bad haircuts. Sun ignites the rose's center, crimson light branding the floor with a fiery "You are here." Centuries later, tourists will barely glance up from their phones. But today, every eye drinks the light. Ezekiel's wheel spins in yellow glass, almost hiding the bubble where you blew too hard into molten silica. Someone sneezes in the Beatitudes, blessing the dust. Your shadow high-fives Judas, both of you eclipsed by glory. Morning stretches across pews that still smell of guilt and pine tar. A dog trots down the aisle, its wagging tail baptizing ankles with mud. You lean against the font, its dry belly echoing like Franklin's empty lard pot. The crowd parts for the bishop's gilded cane. It taps out a dirge on your freshly laid tiles. His mitre's embroidery shows St. Lawrence grilling fitting, given how he's eyeing the coin box. Half donkey winks from the back, already drafting plans for a matching stable. Light shifts, emerald squares creep toward the altar like God's chess pieces. Your blisters throb in time with the chanting. Tomorrow, the first mass tonight, you'll find spiders weaving lace in the rafters, unpaid apprentices of divine drapery. Weight lifts, floats, lodges behind your ribs, not faith, exactly, more like the quiet after nailing the last shingle. Voices rise, jagged at first, then smoothing into something that almost resembles grace. Somewhere, Franklin scribbles notes, revising his lightning rod plans with one eye on forever. Dawn's glow warms the chapel's silent bones, rose window dew trembling like held breath. Sunlight melts through blue glass, pooling where Lazarus's feet might have stood. Dust motes twirl, your final gold leaf waltzing toward cracked floorboards. You trace a thumb over Thomas's fractured hand. Proof, even doubters leave marks. Outside, whispers blend with sparrow chatter, aching boots shuffle closer. A toddler points at Peter's mossy sandal, their giggle bouncing off vaulted stone. Historians will later debate your brushstrokes, call them primitive or devout. Let them. You know the truth of egg yolks mixed into paint, prayers kneaded like dough. The bishop's cane scrapes your new tiles, a sour note in the morning's hymn. His embroidered saint smirks from the mitre. You count the coin box with your toes. Half-donkey's shadow lingers by the font. He'll nail his stable roof crooked tomorrow. Light ripens, dappling Judas's coins into liquid bronze. Someone sneezes into the Psalms. 100 years from now, guides will claim its sacred ash. Your broom rests against Ezekiel's frozen wheel, both too weary to spin. The crowd's awe hangs thick, sweet as overripe pears. You sink onto a pew still sticky, with resin pine scent masking the vinegar of doubt. A mud-caked dog laps holy water its tail, baptizing the floor with earth. Franklin's ghost murmurs about lightning rods. You prefer the risk of fire. Shadows stretch emerald squares, inch toward the altar like cautious pilgrims. Blisters hum against wood grain, a lullaby of labor. Above, spiders stitch silk into shadows, weaving veils for tomorrow's vows. Breaths slow around you, chests rising like bellows cooling. The widow's off-key hymn curls into a snore straw hats dip like wilted flowers. You close your eyes, feel the chapel breathe through its fresh-thatched ribs. Night's last star dissolves. Dawn's blue hour softens to milk. Somewhere, a mule brays, half-donkey already tugging nails from his pockets. Your mind drifts, floating on the scent of beeswax and whispered amens. The world holds its breath, just for this moment, before prayers begin, before pigeons reclaim the rafters, before time etches its name into the walls. Rest now, the measure is laid, the final nail sung home.